Thanks for joining the Warehouse Wins webinar today. Would be cool to hear where everybody's from. If you guys see the chat window down at the bottom of your Zoom, just let us know where you're tuning in from. Always nice to see where everybody is and who we're reaching with those webinars. All right, let's see. Singapore, London, Sweden, Chicago. Whoa. All right. Brighton, UK, Ottawa, Canada. Nice. Got some fellow Canadians in here. Yeah, we're just going to give this a few moments just to have everybody join. Quite a few people that signed up for this one, and we want to make sure that we, well, share our intense knowledge with everybody that is joining today. So give it a couple of moments. And again, thanks for joining. I'm going to be talking a little bit about the warehouse today. Some easy warehouse wins, some best practices, some what we would call warehouse fuck-ups as well that we can hopefully avoid. We're going to have some incredible examples from our two experts today. And yeah, we'll just give this a moment. And one thing that I would encourage everyone that is joining today, if you have any sort of insights that you want to share, any sorts of questions, ideas, best practices, if we're talking about something that you've run into yourself, then just post it in the chat. I think we want to make this like a very interactive session today. So feel free to just like post your thoughts in there, whatever it might be, and then we might pick it up right away, or we might have a little Q&A at the end of the session, and then just focus on that. All right. Looks like we have quite a diverse and international group of people joining today. Hey everyone. All right. "36 people and counting." And if you have any questions for the people that are joining today as the experts, Arjan and Jonathan, especially about Jonathan's gear that he has in the background, you can also just post that in the chat. He might be able to pick those questions up himself. So,
well, we do only have 30 minutes, so yeah, that's probably best one for the chat.
Awesome. Okay. I think the couple of minutes that I mentioned earlier have passed. So I think we're going to get started. If there's a few more people joining, I think they'll get the gist of it while I'm talking about everything. Yeah, so hey everybody, thanks for joining. Welcome to Warehouse Wins. That's the title of our webinar today. My name is Tim Grohmann. I'm the operations manager for Rentman in North America. I'm based here in Toronto, Canada. And I'll be hosting this session for the next 30 to 45 minutes. We'll see how it goes, maybe a little bit longer if we feel there's a need. I'm originally from Germany, but I've been based in Toronto, Canada for the last 8 years, and I've been the forefront of leading Rentman's growth in North America since 2017 here. Yeah, very thrilled to be here today with everybody from both Rentman and beyond. And yeah, what are we going to be talking about today? As the name of the webinar already says, it's about warehouse wins. We all know, I think, that an efficient and well-organized warehouse is essential in any event, AV, media production company, especially with how dynamic our industries can be. So really knowing how to optimize some of the more trivial processes can really, or we believe, make a massive difference both in the short and long run. And really, there's like 3 main reasons that we want to talk about the warehouse today. We talk a lot with a lot of our clients, with our users, and recurring topic that comes up is that a lot of people in our user base just want to learn from other users that are using Rentman as well, and specifically about the warehouse processes. And then the other thing is our industry report. If you haven't checked us out yet, we released it in November of last year. I think we might also post a link to that in the chat, or we'll follow up with a link to that. You can check that out. And we interviewed a ton of people in that industry report. And, one of the major topics that came up is people struggling with production costs being high due to equipment loss and damage, or I think close to 50% of all respondents also reported making mistakes in packing equipment. So it seems to be quite up there with the issues that people are running into. So we figured, hey, let's have a session about this. And coming from a software background, we know that the back end should be important as the front end, as important as the front end. Figured out to throw that in there. So I think we all agree that like all processes need to be aligned and work well. So yeah, hearing about all of those challenges and having those thoughts ourselves, we figured we would start the session. And without further ado, I'll let our experts introduce themselves. Arjan, let's start with you.
Yes, thank you, Tim. Happy to be here. My name is Arjan Immeker. I'm from the Netherlands. Used to be a rental company owner and started working at Rentman in 2018. Being a Rentman user since 2013. I quit my company. It was time for something else, and I now work as a domain specialist at Rentman, using my knowledge and experience to support the product team to develop the product. Next to that, I still operate as a freelance audio engineer. So part-time Rentman, part-time audio engineer, best of both worlds, you could say.
Nice. And then Jonathan, I'll give the word to you.
Hi, folks. Thanks to Rentman for having me. I'm Jonathan Fowkes. I'm the Business Development Manager for Technical Stage Services. We're a live event technology company based in Yorkshire in the UK. Up until last year, I've been hire manager for Technical Stage for 8 years, 8 years plus. Before that, I worked in education and performing arts technology. And I realised just the other day when I was asked this question, that actually the very, very first job I had in the industry was I started a PA company when I was 15. And by PA company, I meant renting out my little tiny vocal band PA. And I had an older friend who drove, and he used to drive me to very cheap pub gigs. So I've been doing it a while.
Nice. I'm assuming there was no need for specific software back then.
Not back then, no. It was didn't even have a mobile phone back then. So yeah.
Fair enough. Very, very manual. Okay, thanks for the intros here. So yeah, for the people only joining now, we're going to be exploring some tools, some strategies. We're going to be talking about some real life examples to get you those quick warehouse wins, things that you guys can relate to as well. And yeah, by the end, what do we want? We want all of the people that are attending today, first of all, to have a good time. And then, maybe save you a little bit of time in the shop, minimize costs, and just make the whole warehousing process a little bit smoother by talking some of those quick warehouse wins we can get you. And as I said before, add your ideas and questions, and if there's something relatable, just post it into the chat. Makes it easy for us to read it, and then we'll just engage with that as well. And before we really get into the practicals here, I want to start asking both of you, and maybe Jonathan, you can go first. What your recent most memorable fuck ups in the shop have been? Going to call this hashtag warehouse nightmares.
Excuse me. So you see, you can't get the help these days. Sorry, this is my daughter just bringing me a cup of tea. You see, the first thing I would recommend to all of you out there is to delegate smaller tasks to staff members. Thank you very much, sweetie. There we go. Right, see. It wasn't that long ago, we had a freelancer come in. They'd unloaded a load of stage decks, stacked them vertically up against a bunch of tipped general purpose flight cases. I was working on my own in the warehouse in the middle of the night, and is lone working. Have a policy in place for lone working, folks. Went to move a flight case. This entire stack of decks started to tip, and I found myself pinned against the wall of the warehouse. Not hurt, but unable to move at around about 2 a.m. on a weekend, and genuinely had to weigh up whether or not I was going to have to call my managing director to come down to the unit and release me. So that was a good one. We also had a freelancer. We'd got 12 incredibly expensive follow spots that we'd sub-hired in, and every single one of them was marked very clearly with no tip in a particular direction. And we came in, and every single one of them had been stacked upside down. And bless him, his explanation was, "I'm so sorry. I always thought the arrow it denoted the direction of the tip." And I was,
yeah.
That was a good one.
Okay. I guess you clarified a few things fairly quickly after both of those experiences, right?
This is why sessions like this are useful, because you never know what you don't know until you ask.
No. Arjan, relatable? Yeah. What do you think?
I don't think I can tip the stage deck experience that Jonathan had. Luckily, I cannot tip that as well, because that's you preferably not be in that situation. But I have some memorable actions, like mistakes being done in the warehouse, that the whole production truck or left And all of a sudden, during production, during setup, someone noticed that a very small part is missing because someone forgot to pack it, and then you just have to let someone drive. I don't know. I'm from the Netherlands, so the distances are not that big. So, but 200 kilometers to drive with one single bolt,
Yeah.
those could have been prevented. Those are always not nice to happen, or trucks coming in different orders in a festival. Those things always happen and always mess up the planning.
Right.
And it's never
Right.
the bolt that you can get from the local hardware store
No,
that's been
no, no, no. It's
forgotten.
always the specific one that
Always
only
the
fits on
specific
that
one.
brand. Yeah, always. Yeah.
Yeah. All right. Cool stories, guys. Thanks for that. If you guys have your own little warehouse nightmares, whatever it might be, just like put them in the chat. We'll laugh a little bit about them together if they're funny. If not, we won't. Um, and yeah, I think we started talking about some challenges. So let's maybe continue with that before we get into any sort of like best practices and everything. I'm going to be throwing this question to both of you. What would you guys kind of in your day-to-day say are the biggest challenges you've run into or you keep on running into? I know that's a very generic question. We can make it more specific, but maybe we'll start with that and then we can get more specific later.
Number one for me is communication. Everybody communicates differently. Everybody uses, especially freelancers who are moving from company to company, they all disseminate information completely differently. And so establishing clear lines of communication right the way through from the initial inquiry through to job delivery on site, everything being back on the shelves at the warehouse is a perennial challenge. And we certainly as a company been through a lot of evolution on that over the years as the company's grown and shifted and people's roles have changed. I think that's the biggest challenge for the industry as a whole, I think.
Yeah, and especially if you also take into account there that like you said, you don't know what you don't know until you ask. Is that sometimes people assume things because it worked like this in the company they worked previously, especially the freelancers, and they might miss stuff and check it off because they think we've packed it because the power cable's always in the box. But this company that you're currently at doesn't have that, and you have to pick them separately. Yeah, if you don't communicate or don't ask such things, then yeah, mishaps will happen definitely. So
Right.
ask questions, even if you think there's no such thing as stupid questions. Just ask.
Yeah, yeah. So it's about like asking those right questions, so like being reactive to those things. But then I think, Jonathan, what you were saying is like being proactive about it as well, and maybe like giving a little bit more information than you think people might need, and then not having them reach out on the phone, via WhatsApp, by text after.
Yeah, absolutely. So an example I'd probably give is when I'm designing quotes. Obviously, I'm putting together equipment lists. Those equipment lists all pass through the hands of a bunch of different people. So the client, who could be anything from a highly skilled technician themselves through to the business manager for a school who just wants to know that they're getting a PA on a particular day, who has no interest in how many mic cables are on the list. What I tend to do is, if I'm putting together, for example, a mic package inside, I mean, I'm not on the payroll, folks, but we do use Rentman and technical stage services, and I will use the internal remarks system to write next to every single microphone what it's being used for, which seems daft. And you go, well, we've got channel lists for all of that for the engineers to use on site. Well, yes, of course. But if I'm already on site and I'm already taking 10 phone calls, and for whatever reason, there's a kick drum mic shortage, it's easily fixed if the people in the warehouse can look at it and go, he needed that for the kick drum. They can substitute that out much more easily if they knew what it was intended for. So it's also a really good way of keeping and saving on mistakes, because those little notes that I carry in my head as to what everything's supposed to be doing, that 50-meter piece of Ethicon, that's for the stage box, but the 31 is for the video wall because it doesn't like working on 50 meters. I know all that stuff, but I can't expect somebody who's just come in for a day picking cables to know why the 50-meter one is in the audio case and the 30-meter one is in the video case. And so just scribbling down all those notes as I go on the equipment list means that even if I fall sick, all of that information is there.
Right.
It helps. So it helps freelancers as well. If you're on a site and you have no idea what you're doing, and there's just a box of cables, and you think, yeah, I need a Edicom cable, you'll pick the first one, and you don't think that this one's specifically for another part. So you're doing the same job twice on site because you just grabbed the long cable where you should have used a different one, or
Yeah.
vice versa.
Yeah. So finding ways to like, not just like have the minimum of information whenever, whatever it is, like you might be creating, a quote, a packing list, pull sheet, whatever you want to call it. But then also like giving a little bit of information, thinking a little bit ahead and thinking what if, and then basically complementing it with that information that might be required.
Yeah, and I would hope. Yeah, I'm sure a lot of we've all got at times we have an abundance of talent in our teams, and then other days you have people being like, okay, they're going to need a bit more help.
Mm,
An abundance of information is never going to harm any of those people, but will help all of them.
right.
And when it comes around, as if you're project managing and you come around to writing the project brief to try and get all of this information out to your team that are going to be working on site on the day. I mean, I'm sure a lot of people watching have written those documents, and you could spend a week trying to export all the information in your head onto that document.
Yeah.
And there's a good chance nobody will have, even if you did spend a week on it and it was 60 pages long, then no one's going to read it. So just peppering that information any way you can, constantly having conversations with your warehouse team, explaining to them what you're building, not just how many speakers you need, but what it's supposed to be doing in the room. So they can have, a lot of them are going to be, they can use their visual imagination to picture what it is you're trying to achieve. I sort of delivering too much of that information is a good thing in my eyes, because it lets people fill in the gaps where there are some.
Yeah, and that also helps with packaging, right? So if the people in the warehouse know what the item is supposed to do, they might think for themselves and pack those things together instead of having everything all around the different boxes.
And it gives them a chance to catch your mistakes.
Yeah, exactly.
Because I've definitely made them. I'm sure you have, Arjan, as well. That's what we have our teams for. I don't mean to call you out there. So.
No, but everybody makes mistakes, and
and if you put people in a position to catch those mistakes for you, then that reflects well on everybody.
Yeah. Empowers other people so that you don't have to take care of everything yourself in the end. Like one point that I want to go on is like, you mentioned like having freelancers come in and then like maybe not everybody having the information. We got a question from Hamish here who's asking, how do you handle training and upskilling of both new employees, freelancers, etc., when it comes to defining warehouse processes? And then to follow on that, how do you handle any lack of engagement in the process? Because it might be a complicated one. So training and upskilling of both new employees and freelancers when it comes to warehouse processes.
I think of the two of those, new employees is the easier answer, because you have them for a period of time, and then it comes back to effective teaching strategies. So identifying the type of learner they are, whether they take information in better visually, audibly, in written form, diagrams, whatever that might be. And I'd definitely say anybody training staff is to really think about that. Is okay, you might have a flow chart that helps you identify a particular process. That's great, but also have it written down and also talk it through with somebody. Maybe make a YouTube video. Having 4 or 5 different routes to deliver that information, they're going to resonate with different people differently. So again, double down on that. Don't just be like, I like flowcharts, so I do flowcharts, because some people will process that less effectively than you do. Freelancers is trickier because there's a higher turnover, you get less time with them. I think compartmentalizing those processes. When we have freelancers in the warehouse, typically we'll assign them to should we say like narrower lane jobs, because they are only with us for a short time, rather than trying to train them on the whole process. They'll work under one of our employees, and it might be, here's your section of the kit list. It's just the cable that's in this aisle. You get all of that cable picked, and then somebody who's used to using Rentman or whatever rental software it is you use can then scan it and assign it to the right containers and so on. So we keep their scope more limited, so that we're not having to train them on a huge warehouse process, because it's too much to deliver and expect them to give back to you in a day. Keep the scope smaller and have your full timers handling the sort of higher end functions.
Got it. So in the end, understanding like how everybody like learns in the end and trying to adjust that like however necessary. That might be visual, that might be written out, or like just combining different things and making sure that people learn that way. Um, and then, of course, on the other hand, like only sharing what's really needed with the people that might not be around all the time.
Keep
And
the
then thereby
workload,
you avoid, messing things up that they might not even need to be involved in.
yeah, keep the workload manageable, especially if you've only got them for a limited time, and make sure that they are empowered to ask questions. Because I think there's a lot of nervousness and ego in our industry, where people don't want to be seen to be asking a daft question, for fear that they won't get invited back. And I always tell everybody who works for us, I'd much rather have somebody come to me and ask what's perceived as a stupid question than me come back to their work halfway through the day and realize they've done it in a stupid way. Yeah. That's so much harder for me to deal with than just answering a question that maybe even in my own head I'm thinking, oh, I'm kind of surprised they didn't know that. It doesn't matter, because I'd much rather work with people who are going to ask those questions than will just muddle through slowly and inaccurately, to hide the fact that they didn't know something.
Arjan, you're working freelance AV these days, on the side of Rentman, obviously. Like, maybe you have some insights on this question as well, like, upskilling, or when it comes to, handling lack of engagement.
Well, for new employees, also make sure that it's workload related, that they have the time to learn, right? Don't treat them as as someone who will do the same amount of work in the same time as your experienced people will do so, and talk them through the process and to explain them why you do certain things. I think that's always something that you should keep doing, and invest in them. But again, that's for new employees. That it's an investment that you then do, right? You want to make sure that they get the fine lines of the job.
Got it. Yeah. Okay, cool. Thanks for the insights, yeah, and thanks for the question, Hamish. Guys, if you have any other questions like this, just post them in the chat. We'll pick them up as you can see if they're related to the topic today. And I think like one thing that you guys mentioned earlier as well that I quickly want to jump in on when it comes to challenges are clarifying that maybe something belongs to this package or this is going to have this purpose. Let's focus a little bit more on the topic of packages, like the topic of like not having things packaged enough. How has that been a challenge? And I think both of you can probably provide some good insights on that.
Yeah, I see a lot of some companies, especially newer ones, they start without having standard packaging, right? And then for each job, they know exactly what items they need, and they repack it every now and then, for every job. And the danger with that is that you might easily forget the things that you might need on site. So indeed, making default packaging that not only include the things that you need, but also the things that you might need, have that in a default package would save a lot of time on site if something does not go according to plan. And things never go according to plan, right? There's always additional stuff. So packaging, and also making clear what should be in boxes. So clear labels stating what should be in each box. It might seem obvious, but I do see this happening every now and then, that there's just a box and there's stuff in it, and people know by head what should be in which box. But if you then come in as a freelancer, you have no clue, and yeah, unfortunately, you make a mess of it because you just think, all right, it should be in one of the boxes. I'll just put it in this one, which then gives them, they will need more time unpacking and checking all the equipment back at the warehouse.
Yeah, I 100% agree. I think what you said about sort of when companies are smaller or starting out, there's a kind of a temptation to sort of under package. And I think I know the driving force behind that, which is a lot of the time budget. It's like, actually, do we want to include this cable in with this desk? Because actually we might want to use this Cat5 cable across multiple jobs for multiple different things. And very quickly you get to the point where the cost of one more Cat5 in the back of a 10 grand desk is negligible next to we've got an engineer who definitely wants to run it through a switch, definitely wants to use the wireless access, and now they don't have it. And then you're back in the van, going to the hardware store or going to the electronics store.
Yeah.
And it takes so few of those trips to pay for whatever it is you didn't just have living in the box.
Yeah, totally agree on that. That happened too many times.
I think that's key to purchasing as well. When purchasing kit, it's tempting to look at the main top line item, but factoring in a percentage of your capital investment budget and when you're buying new equipment to making sure that you've got enough accessories to fully complete every package.
Yeah,
it's incredibly galling. I mean, we're an acoustic supplier. We bought a bunch of X12 monitor wedges. They are quite pricey speakers, and sometimes they are flown. Sometimes they're little delays or they go on a truss. And it's so tempting to not spend however many hundreds of euros for the little bracket that lets you do that. You go, oh, you know what? If we're buying 12, we'd probably need 4 of those on most jobs. Or you could just get 12, bite the bullet, and make sure every single case of 2 always has 2 in it. And there are economies to be had from doing that eventually, because there's a good chance that a lot of the suppliers you may subrent off haven't bought enough either. So they might not be that happy to sub-rent you theirs when you need them. Those obscure little accessories cost a fortune, but are worth investing in, I think, a lot of the time.
And also there's also the issue where you can easily get mistakes. Like if you have indeed 12, like 6 cases, and only 3 of them have the brackets.
Yep.
You know for sure that the wrong case is going to the wrong project, and you end up with the needing the brackets while the brackets are somewhere on a different job not being used. So yeah, indeed, biting the bullet there is. Yeah, I know it's easy to talk about spending the money, but in the end, it will be more cost efficient, definitely.
Yeah,
we know that time is money at the end of the day.
Yeah,
and saving burnout for your crews hunting around for things. The warehouse feeling like, oh, we've made a mistake, and that kind of demoralizing impact of that. There are so many knock-ons to making mistakes in that area that go beyond just not having the right bit in the box. It's the impact on morale.
The theme that I see a little bit emerging here is like building in redundancies, when it comes to communication, when it comes to purchasing, when it comes to, packaging, just like maybe doing a little bit more in the beginning, making sure that like you have that little bit of buffer that you need, and then being able to fall back on that when, for lack of a better term, shit hits the fan, like just being able to like fall back on that.
Yeah, and packaging things. I mean, I think packaging up a 4-way kit of radio mics, for instance, is a pretty obvious one. I'm sure a lot of us do that. But also some of the sort of stranger packages. So not even stranger, but just let's say we've got an audio job. 99 times out of 100, you're going to need speak-on cable, XLRs. You're going to need some mic clips. You're going to need all the things that go on every sound job. So why not have a GP where that's already pre-packed and contained? That's just that case goes on every sound job. And you just have it on the shelf packed, because that will save you 100 barcode scans when that job goes out. It's having that ready, and anybody who's quoting for that job, they just put one of those cases on because it's an audio job. You're going to have spares. You're going to have stuff you didn't necessarily need.
Yeah, the default production cases that have tape, Sharpies, adapters, the XLR adapters. Normally, you wouldn't need that, but there's always a situation where you do need them. And if those things are all packed, like in every production, one of these goes with the production, then that saves so much time. And also, you don't need to think about it in the warehouse because it's there.
Yeah. Got it. Thanks for the insights there. We have a couple of questions that came in about software-specific things, Rentman-specific things. And we're going to keep this webinar today a little bit more about like warehouse wins, and like try to be a little bit more generic here. We will be getting back to you about the questions that you're posting into the Q&A and chat in person though. And I think we have a couple of other webinars coming up soon where we'll talk a little bit more Rentman-specific, whereas this today is a little bit more generic, trying to help people out, trying to get some insights. So don't worry, we'll still get back to you. Okay. We talked about a couple of things. Let me see where we're at. Got like half an hour in. I think one thing that I find interesting and that I think I've heard a little bit in the past is, you have people kind of planning out the jobs in the front end, project planning side, quoting, doing all of that. What are some of the issues that you guys have seen that if they're not done right on the front end, that trickle down into the warehouse? I think we started off with like a little bit on the communication side already, that if you don't add enough information, um, then it basically like later on in the warehouse, there might be more questions, there might be more calls, more emails. Is there anything else you guys can think of that's happened here? If you don't do it early enough, it will hunt
I
you
think
later.
there's always a little bit of tension between sales and operations. You know, sales's job is different to operations job, and there's always in every company. This goes outside of our industry. There's always a little bit of push and pull there. I think it's very easy to when you're putting together kit lists and putting together quotes to try and condense the amount of kit on the kit list to just what is needed to keep the price as competitive as possible. And then it ends up being kicked warehouse to then determine spares and all the rest of it. But if you've had a lot of quotes going out, you've got really high utilization of your kit, and everything's pared down to the bone at the sales end, all of a sudden the warehouse are prepping 3 or 4 jobs at once, and they're suddenly realizing we don't have any spares or any redundancy in the system here to share out amongst these. So I think again, it does come back to communication, of course. This is where actually prepackaged kit are useful. Yeah. Because effectively you're building the spares into your quote because you're adding that at the quote stage.
Right.
And you're not having to sit there thinking it's going to be 3 DMX cables this long and 4 16-amp cables that long and trying to do it cable by cable by cable. And then you have somebody, and a lighting designer on site who just goes, actually, I want to put that over there. So I need 10-meter cable for that. And all of a sudden the whole thing falls apart. By having those cable packages in as non-chargeable items potentially, or a fixed rate, it's just that goes on the job. It makes it easier for sales to sort of sell that to the client. It's just an encapsulated amount of stuff that makes the job work. Yeah. And it relieves a little bit of the pressure on the warehouse, having to make those judgment calls often quite last minute as the final day's prep lists come through. So yeah, I think that just striking a balance between those two things is important.
Yeah, I can see some interesting insights in that as well. Tamim is saying that sales and operations are enemies. So I feel like sentiment is being mirrored there. And then Michael, hey Michael, is saying we've converted the pre-configured kits of cable, XLR network, etc., and built them into our project templates. Interesting. It's been immensely beneficial. So even going one step further, this is very Rentman specific now, obviously, but putting that into the actual project templates and not just like creating the packages themselves.
Can I add something onto that? Actually, they're building it into project templates. So one thing that we do, and because I think one thing that's really crucial is time to do really good prep and actually de-prep. I think a lot of people put a lot of attention into prep, and de-prep is just you can get it back on the shelves. And I think actually in our project templates, we like prep and de-prep time are always lines built in, and even at the point of sales, there'll be a guesstimation of approximate prep time. De-prep time is always at least the same as prep time, because if things are effectively prepped onto the shelves, it means you can be a lot more responsive when last minute things come in. It means when you have an unexpected pileup of jobs. If your prep involves pulling off a single case off the shelf that has been meticulously put together, that's an awful lot easier. One thing you do have to be careful of is discipline with your team, because the temptation, we all know what it's like. You go, I just need one more XLR. I'll just grab it off the shelf and not scan it out, or I'll just pull it out of this case. Yeah. I don't like non-sustainable solutions, but tested tape across the catches of flight cases can come in helpful here.
Yeah, I see more and more companies using the actual seals that they put through the flight case handles. So you cannot open the flight case without breaking the seal. And indeed, if you during the deprepping or quality assurance or however you want to call it, indeed make sure your packages are back in the state you want them. It saves so much prep time,
It
so
really
much
does.
packing time, and
Yeah.
and next to that, you'll also know that your equipment will be in a good state when it's on the shelf. I would always suggest to do the quality assurance when equipment's coming back. Make sure it works, still works.
Take the time for it. And then,
Yeah,
as you said, like maybe it's not just about like virtually sealing them, but also then like physically sealing them if you feel like it's
yeah,
gonna,
yeah, yeah.
add the benefits.
Yeah, test them and also physically seal them. Yeah.
Got it. Okay. So I think we talked about like some of the issues and some other best practices I think would be helpful too. And guys, if you're in the chat, just add some more ideas, questions, thoughts in there. Happy to pick those up and talk a little bit more about those as well, especially if you can mirror some of those feelings that like or like experiences that the guys are having here. We talked about packaging equipment. We talked about communication, and I think like one thing that came up is maybe grabbing that one um, cable additionally. Jonathan, I think like one thing that you said recently when we were speaking was about serialization. So
Yeah.
having everything serialized, individually QR coded. So basically, really tracking even smaller items individually. Give me your thoughts on that. Like, how do you guys handle that?
Yeah, so I mean, my basic rule of thumb for individual serialization is, do I have to be able to track that item? Now, in the UK, obviously we have pat testing regulations. So if it's electrical, it needs inspecting every 12 months. So IEC cables are a classic because they're all molded. So getting a cable sleeve over it and a barcode onto it, it's a pain. For a start, QR is much better than barcode. We used to use on a barcode system. We moved to QR now because the scanning sizes you can work with are so much smaller.
Right.
So that makes labeling things just physically a lot easier. Don't go too small though, because it makes it easier to damage. But yeah, go as small as you need to, but as big as you can when it comes to QR codes. But yeah, as soon as it seems it's very easy just to think of ICs because they come in every box. You've got hundreds of them rattling around the warehouse to just be like, oh, they're just a they're a bulk item. But you've got to be able to track them in a pat test, so they all get coded. Stage
Right.
legs don't need to be able to track those individually. So save yourself time from having to scan every single leg. Yeah, that's fine. Stick a QR code for the item type on the edge of your shelf. That's the kind of the main way we differentiate between whether or not it needs to be individually serialized is, do I need to be able to track that one particular item? If a stage leg's broken, we'll be able to identify it when it gets back to the warehouse. If an XLR has decided to go on the fritz, then yeah, actually it is quite useful to know the exact number of that, so it can be pulled out by the warehouse team when it gets back to the warehouse. And on that note, I saw somebody talking about scanning on site. Kyle, I won't talk about RFID because that's not really my specialty. But I will say, take your rental software laptop to sites because logging repairs while on site, because we know what it's like when kit comes back to the warehouse with a big cross of electrical tape on it and it just says effed. Much better to be able to log a repair as you find it and save the warehouse.
If you can do that on
time.
site, indeed, you not only save the warehouse people time, but also you will see that there's a problem arising, right? If an expensive piece of equipment is broken and you mark it as broken as soon as possible, there will be a shortage probably in the next project, so you can
Right.
already decide, hey, I need to substitute this? Do I need to plan a repair instead of jobs are going back to back, instead of at that moment having the stress to, oh, we need to fix this now, and which
that's a really good
induces
point.
a lot of stress, which you want to avoid, right?
Yeah. So having a system on site really that, helps you record those things in real time and then potentially communicates even back to like people in the shop, people in the office, can make a difference here,
Yeah.
especially when
Yeah.
it comes to like, understanding availabilities for future project, depending if
Yeah.
something is reserved on some other gig already.
Yeah, and then if especially all your cables are serialized as well, as soon as you scan that specific cable, and your system will warn you, when it comes back in the warehouse, and
Right.
someone scans that specific cable back in the warehouse, there will be a warning saying, "Hey,
Yeah. So
you should
so
do
when
something
when
with
when
this."
the EFT tape has fallen off.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah,
Exactly.
Digitalize the F tape.
exactly.
I think that should be the major takeaway today.
Yeah.
One of the major takeaways, digitalizing the F tape. Um, Sweet. Let me just go through some things. Quick thing I wanted to throw in here: print versus digital. Thoughts on that? Printing those pull sheets, printing the packing list, doing things more digitally. I think we just got an example of that.
Yeah, in my opinion, as soon as you print something, it's outdated. So if you print a slip and you start packing and you're checking off items that you packed in the warehouse,
Mm,
uh, what, how do you handle last minute changes? So yeah, in general, I think having a real time system where you can see what actually is happening, and especially if you're also working with multiple people at the same time in the warehouse, I know there are ways of doing it. You start with you start at the top, I start from the bottom,
mm,
those kind of things. But there's always you could even say that, again, this is communication because who you cannot keep track on who's doing what in real time, or maybe you're doing double work or walking
yeah.
by something that's on the bottom of the list. Well, if you have sorted stuff on warehouse location, for instance, you can be way more efficient in that case.
I mean, yeah,
Yeah.
we the only things I mean, we obviously we're trying to go as paperless as possible anyway for carbon footprint and sustainability purposes anyway. But yeah, about the only paperwork we print now is plots, call sheets, and final delivery notes. Delivery notes we will print when everything's
Yeah,
prepped and
yeah,
packed. Sure,
Mm, mm,
and that is a useful thing to have on site in case you do go into a Wi-Fi cellular complete black spot, all your batteries on your laptops run out, or whatever the issue is.
yeah.
That is where paper, is still king. So we will still print a paper delivery note, but yeah,
Sure.
in terms of managing warehouse operations, yeah, I agree with Arjan. It's digital's better.
fully digital. Yeah. Yeah.
There are always, especially if you work a lot with freelancers, they might not have access to your digital system. So then it makes indeed sense to have the final documents included in the stuff you send to the site. Yeah, definitely.
Understood. Okay. Um, Great. Yeah, we have like Hamish joining in here again and saying, yeah, big agree in getting rid of printing real-time systems using cellular-enabled tablets. Tablets can also go to the site and they help with digitizing the F-tape. So glad we're going
Yeah,
back to that. Um, and yeah, Michael is, I think, joining in as well, also said that seals are super helpful for work boxes. Um,
Mm.
and then talks a little bit about pouches and only need to check pouches where seals are broken. So making sure that you even seals like smaller items there as well. And then also some feedback on the Rentman Zapier integration. So you
yeah,
can kind of like move things back and forth. So integrating like whatever software you're using doesn't need to be Rentman. Yeah, it makes it easy to kind of like push information from one place to the other and make sure that everybody has it accessible.
yeah,
Um, Great. One thing that I quickly want to talk about because we're talking about the warehouse here is QR codes.
mm,
I know this is a big topic, and I think we can probably have a whole webinar about this as well. And by the way, we will have a specific webinar about RFID. I know there was a question about this as well. So we'll have a separate session about this in the next couple of months. So keep your eyes on that. Just follow us on the socials, and you'll see whenever we post about that. But maybe to start things off here, Jonathan, you mentioned that you have QR code quite a few things, pretty much a lot of it. What were some of the do's and don'ts when you guys started with that, and why did you start with it in the first place?
So we were originally on a barcode-based system. Obviously, when we moved to Rentman, QR codes became sort of available to us. There had always been challenges with barcodes, particularly on if you have to print them out large enough to get them to scan cleanly on a wire, then you end up with sort of radius issues. How do you protect the barcode? Getting cable shrink over the top of it when you don't want to have to remove all of your 16 amp connectors to get some 3-to-1 heat shrink over the top of it, and it was a nightmare. QR definitely has the advantage of being able to print smaller. That was our big thing. In fact, when we first started to roll it out, especially on some of those smaller items where it was tricky to get barcodes in before, and we used to have to be cutting up our nice branded barcode labels into half to fit them inside a Sennheiser mic pack and all the rest of it. It finally resolved those issues, so that was great. What I would suggest, though, is if you are making the move to QR from a barcode system or no system, whatever scanner you have or whatever scanners you use, including your iPhone or other phones are available, test the size of the print with the cameras and scanners you are using, and if you are protecting them with something like heat shrink, test the type of heat shrink you're using, see if it goes smoky and grey and gets scuffed up easily, see what that does to the readability of the codes. Do tests. In a perfect world, we'd all be able to print them this big and protect them with solid perspex. We're not in an ideal world, so and all scanners would read equally, but of course they don't. So yeah, before you buy 20,000 stick-on labels,
do some testing.
Test them with the scanners you've got and work out how you're going to protect them, for sure.
Got it. Yeah, Arjan, you've been on both sides. You've been on the rental side and on the Rentman side or on the software side. Any recommendations also on the QR side?
Put them in logical places, accessible places. So
yes, and the same place on each item.
Yeah, exactly that. Don't make them as accessible as possible. If you have a flight case with moving heads returning, make sure that you do not need to take them out and be able to scan them. Which is also, there's also something to say about the fact I know companies who actually do place the QR codes on a specific spot, so you have to take them out of the flight case in order to force a bit of visual inspection.
Force the behavior, yeah.
So yeah, you can go multiple ways, but at least put them all in for every moving head on the same place, so you don't need to search. Yeah, that's definitely something. I've had some issues with QR codes when they were a bit bended, especially if they were inwards bended. I do not know if that's the correct English. So also test that before. But that is what Jonathan said. Test it, make sure that it works.
Right. Yeah. Got it. Okay. So yeah, and obviously like having a system that supports QR codes in the first place is going to be, the most important thing to start with. If you don't have that,
otherwise it does not make sense, right? To have QR codes.
I'll also say that while we already had all of our stock fully assetted and coded on our previous system, and so I was very excited about the ability to batch import using an XLS file or similar. It is great, but do yourself a favor. Break it into small batches, maybe by product type, maybe by department. It is really tempting to take your entire kit database and then go, right, here's my nice CSV, and I'm going to import all that at once. It makes data wrangling and error checking and stock checking. Don't do it. Don't resist the urge. Do it in batches. Split it into sensible chunks and import them as blocks. You'll thank me later.
I agree on that.
Cool. Good stuff. And I know that we've been talking about like QR codes and barcodes now, and I don't want to talk too much about this because I did say that RFID is something that we want to talk about separately. But Arjan, as someone who has already like looked into this, worked with this a little bit, I briefly want to just get your take on like why you think RFID could be a fit for some companies out there. The reason I want to ask this as well is because we had a question from one of the people attending today that asked, what do you guys think are kind of the automations of the future for warehousing in this industry? And I think that might fit in there. So give me your take on that.
Ooh, yeah. In an ideal world, where I hear a lot of companies who fantasize about having gates in different sections of the warehouse and not having the need to do anything, and automation would follow everything that has been put through a gate. It could be technically even possible, but still, I always think that there should be a human factor involved in some thinking that should be that the warehouse employees should keep doing. the main benefit of RFID is speeding up process. So it's way
Mm.
faster in if you have all your IEC cables like tagged with an RFID tag, you can
No.
count them
So you got
way
one
faster.
here.
Yeah.
I mean,
That
look like
that
this, small
yeah,
guys.
yeah. And the for a lot of cables you can put a heat shrink that fits over the connector, so you can mount them pretty fast. So yes, scanning them, that's way faster. And again, together with serializing also your power cables or even your XLR cables, your digital system can benefit from it, because as soon as every item is individual, is unique, then your system will know which specific cable went to which specific
Mm.
project. So when returning items, it will be way faster. Or if you're missing or finding some specific barcode that was lost, then you know
Yeah.
where it was or where it should have been.
Yeah. Yeah. So more redundancy, more speed, just being able to like track things even in greater detail.
Yeah, it's not only speed; it's also redundancy indeed, preventing mistakes. So I
Yeah.
know some examples of people who still gather all the equipment that needs to go out, just by manually by putting it all together, and then in one go, basically assign serial numbers to the actual items that have been prepped,
Mm.
and then they do it that way. So that could work. There are multiple ways on multiple takes on how to implement and how to use this, but pretty sure we will dive into those use cases
Yeah,
during the
we'll
other.
we'll 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 have a specific session about this,
Yeah,
guys. So just like keep you guys posted on like our socials. I think we'll be communicating that there. We have one more question, and maybe I can ask you that, Jonathan from Brian Stanford here. How do you handle QR coding cables without
Yeah,
having to
spotted that
remove
one.
every connector? Did you spot that? Oh, you spotted that one. Okay, you did.
Yeah, I was champing at the bit for that one. Yeah, it was a pain because every cable's different.
yeah,
16 amp cable. I mean, I will say, like I say, QRs are great because you can print them small enough. We now print ours small enough. Things that
Same
weren't
here.
our XLRs that weren't previously already barcoded and heat shrunk, like Michael mentions below with the clear adhesive wrap, or heat shrink tubes that will fit over a smaller connector. That's how we used to do it. But the great thing is now, it used to be that we couldn't wrap a barcode around a 16 amp commando socket because the barcode would warp radius wise and it wouldn't scan properly. So they were always a nightmare, and you were always kind of rolling them under the scanner. And now the QRs, they can be small enough we can stick them straight onto the plastic connector. They're pretty protected there anyway,
Yeah.
and they scan just fine. So a lot of the time now, directly onto the connector housing, depending on the type of connector. Smaller, really small cables are trickier. Actually, that's one of the few times we do actually go back to a barcode, because we're printing it along the onto a sticker that
Right.
wraps around the length
yeah,
of the cable
yeah.
next to the connector, and then heat shrink onto that. So if the connector's big enough for a QR code to be printed small, go that way. Otherwise, yeah, back to a traditional barcode, wrap around the cable and heat shrink.
Got it. Okay. Hope that's helpful, Ryan. But we also have the reply from Michael there. Thanks so much for the insights there, Michael.
Yeah.
Really helpful for the chat here. Perfect. Okay. Yeah, I think I want to encourage everyone joining in the chat and listening to maybe post any other questions in here. I think we're approaching the 1 hour mark right now. So let's maybe ask everybody to go in here, post some more questions, some more ideas, whatever you guys want in there. And then I think like while we're getting those questions, I want to ask both of you, what would you think are the things that people can do, maybe even today, tomorrow? Some quick warehouse wins. This is what this webinar is about. What are the quick warehouse wins for you that like people can maybe do tomorrow, next week, the week after to kind of like improve processes a little bit?
I think the ones I would loop back to are things we've kind of touched on throughout. So when you're writing equipment lists, write notes on every line if necessary, but just whatever you thought that was intended for, stick it in whatever software you use, in whatever like internal notes area you've got. Just quickly jot down what it's for. It will save yourself a load of questions. People feel more involved in the process. Spend more time on deprep than you do on prep. because when the last minute jobs come in, you'll be able to push them out a lot faster. And go packaging mad. Very quick example. We rack all of our Sennheiser radio mics. They're all in 4-way racks with their own antenna distro in there. And you can obviously chain those together to make larger packages. If somebody comes to us for 12 radio mics, our sales team don't put 3 4-way racks on. They go into the planner and they put a 12-way kit on, because the 12-way kit includes 3 4-way racks and all the BNC aerial interconnects and an antenna package to make that system work as per Sennheiser's spec. So the salesperson doesn't need to refer back to the manual to remember how to stitch 3 4-way kits together to make a 12-way kit that works. So you can have multiple packages for one item, dependent on use case. Go nuts with packages.
Got it.
Yeah, I'm completely with that. Packaging and digitalizing, packaging and communicating, those are the things. The thing I wanted to add is if you're still working, if you're not digitalized, start with it small and feel the benefits and in having real-time updates of what you're actually doing in the warehouse. And of course, you need to start somewhere, but if you keep postponing this, then you will never win the time saving, right? So digitalizing, I think it's a good thing to do.
Got it. Thanks for that. It's, I think, a good summary here. And let's focus on some questions here. I think there's one question about the durability of the overwrap for the QR codes. 1 year, 5 years. Jonathan, experiences there?
Depends on the type of cable and how long it gets used for. Honestly, it does have a limited shelf life. Overwrap doesn't last as long as heat shrink. It can, as it starts to bend and flex, it can get cloudy. If it's one of those ones where it's going to cause you a real problem, I mean, there is a pro tip that if you underneath the barcode, if you've got room on the cable, you can write in Sharpie, silver Sharpie, on the cable itself the number that is on the barcode. So that when it does peel off, you still know the code of that particular cable. So when you get back from a job and you find 4 or 5 barcode labels in the bottom of the GP and you go, oh no, which ones were these from? You can relabel the cable with the same asset number. So sometimes that's nice. We've used that. The overwrap doesn't last as long. It does eventually peel. Okay,
so keeping an eye on it.
Yeah.
Replacing if necessary. Okay.
Yeah, replacing barcodes is a pain. Especially if you don't know which number was which.
Yeah.
So would it be better to do it like doing your pet testing or something? Just even though the label's still good, or if you see it's getting worn out at that point, that you then just preventively replace it.
A stitch in time saves 9, as they say. Yeah, I'd go along with that.
Yeah.
All right. We have Mitch coming in here asking, why don't you guys use RFID on cables? He's saying we use RFID for curtains and have about 30,000 stock with Rentman. Works great. Jonathan, why don't you?
Why don't we? At the moment it comes down to cost. Rolling it out across our entire stock has a significant cost, particularly in terms of the time of implementing it, essentially re-assetting everything. I would say if I was starting a hire company tomorrow and I was going out and buying my first van's worth of kit, I would absolutely start RFIDing from day one. Transitioning is not an insignificant cost. So if you are interested in RFID, I would start now and accumulate your stock, RFIDing everything. There are a lot of advantages to it.
Yeah, that's a very good point, Jonathan. If you have not digitalized your assets currently and you need to do it anyway, then yes, there's a bit of a higher price point for RFID, but you are ready to save a lot of time during the warehouse movements. So, and the amount of time it takes to put on barcodes or QR codes, it's about the same amount that it will take you to put an RFID tag on the cable. So, just might want to do it right then. Oh, this is I think this is our cue. No, maybe I'm at the office, and at the office time, the lights go off on the screen.
Okay.
That is straight to
Um,
Just a
time.
hook's going to come out from the side
Yeah,
of the
yeah,
stage.
yeah, yeah, yeah. Yeah, it's basically
okay,
a
there we
hook.
go.
Yeah.
Got the light back.
Thank
Nice.
you.
Um, perfect. Okay. So in the end, it comes down to switching costs and maybe just not
Yeah.
having started with that. So, but definitely something for people to look into. And the cool thing is with RFID, you can also have the QR codes on the actual RFID, so you can have both at the same time. So, if you're new to this, maybe look into that. Um, right. And I have one last question. I think we're gonna finish things up after that, guys. If you have anything else, just post it in the chat. Might be able to pick it up the next time. Actually, let us know what you want us to talk about RFID. I think that would be cool. If you
Yeah,
have
yeah,
some
that's
questions about
cool.
RFID,
Yeah.
post them in the chat already, then we'll have another session that we can do about that one. But Isaac is asking, I work in a company that operations and warehouse are two separate teams. How do we at warehouse convince operations that using QR codes is quicker, faster, and more efficient than manually clicking the item to check out?
I've got a couple of ideas on this. This might be my sales side coming out. But
Yeah.
if I was the warehouse team trying to convince operations to support us in the change, I don't know whether you ever do any job shadowing. Prep up, get some gear with some QR codes on it, and get them to kind of come have a day, an afternoon's experience in the warehouse, and get them to prep a job, manually clicking it in and out, and scanning it. Show them like physically, and maybe even get them to do it. The difference it would make for you. The other thing is put it into operations terms. Um, put it in terms
Financial,
of
maybe, yeah.
financial or time spent.
Definitely.
Do
Yeah.
some actual database testing.
Yeah.
Prep a couple of jobs with QRs, prep a couple of jobs traditionally, and say this same job of this value went out with this many person hours at this cost with QR, and it went out with this many person hours and this
Right.
cost manually. And then at that point, I think the decision hopefully speaks for itself.
One other thing, if you want to track specific serial numbers of your assets, that if you have to do that by hand, that's how are you going to identify the serial number itself?
Mm.
And in the end, operations wants to know the return on investment of their equipment. How much money did each individual asset made?
Yeah.
Especially if you want to replace your, if it's older, you might want to replace a few moving heads, but keep the ones that have been rented out or been used the least. Th- at that point, it's really valuable to know which items have been used more.
No.
And
And
also, if you're not able to individually serialize items like the classic IEC cable with a molded plug on it that has no unique identifier, ask them how you're supposed to do individual asset tracking for compliance testing, and ask them what the cost of the average workplace incident insurance payout is
yeah,
if you are found to be not individually tracking and testing items that you are legally required to.
Put it into their terms. Yeah.
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
Okay.
Communication, saving time, preventing mistakes as well. If you have to scan a barcode, you always know that you have the correct item. Especially if you have warehouse employees who are new. There are a lot of cables who look at first glance they look exactly like the same cable, but they
Yeah.
are actually not. The classic XLR 5-pin or 3-pin. From the outside, you only see it if you look inside of the connector. But if they would scan the wrong barcode, a QR code, the
It's gonna
system
tell them.
could tell you, hey, you should
Yeah.
not pick this one.
Yeah.
Yeah. Great. All right, guys. I think that's it for today. I know we have two more questions here, or like two more feedback, Michael. Some feedback on the warehouse for Rentman. Thanks so much for this. Let me forward that. And then Rasmus, I
Ah,
did see your point in the Q&A. Let me forward that as well, and we'll send you some more information on that. For now, I want to really thank our two experts here. Arjan, thanks for making the time. Jonathan, really appreciate all the insights you shared with us today. And I also want to give props to the chat. Thanks for being so engaging,
yeah.
asking lots of questions, giving us some insights on how you guys are doing things. This recording will be shared with you in the coming days if you have nothing better to do and want to rewatch it. But we'll also be
Ooh, I
sharing it
might.
with everybody else. Jonathan, where can people find more about you?
You can find us at technicalstageservices.co.uk for our rental services, installation services, and sales. or you can email me directly at jonathan@technicalstageservices.co.uk. Yeah. Oh, and I think we have a Rentman referral link as well somewhere. I'm hoping.
Yeah, I think we'll be sending that out as well. If you're not a Rentman user yet and you're interested in signing up, use the link of Jonathan. He's going to get a little bit of kickback from that for
Yes,
being so
please.
helpful today. Yeah, Hamish, we'll be sending out the recording. You can share it with the rest of the team. If you want to learn more about Rentman, if you're new to this, go to rentman.io. Make sure to check out our industry report as well. And the last thing is we actually have a product webinar coming up on March 18th.
Yes.
So for anyone that had more product specific questions, Rasmus, Michael, March 18th, I think it's on the socials already. Just join there, listen to what the new stuff is, and then also ask your questions there. But obviously also reach out to support@rentman.io to get them. And yeah, generally speaking, follow us on our socials, Instagram, Facebook, LinkedIn, if you're using LinkedIn. So follow us there, and then you can even see other events that are coming up, like the product webinar on March 18th. For now, thanks so much for joining. Appreciate you guys being here. Thanks, Jonathan. Thanks, Arjan, again.
Thanks for having me.
We'll see you guys next time.
Thank you, Tim.
Thanks so much, everyone. Have a good one. Bye-bye.
Bye, folks.